What would it mean to be able to harness the power of your soul and find peace? Well, this is our bonus week, and our bonus week we are covering Chapter 17, Find Freedom Through Forgiveness. Chapter 18, Behold Your Beloved. And a special bonus section of the book on affirmations. And so this is our wrap up of the book Through God's Eyes. And we have Phil Bolsta here with us today. Thank you, Phil, for joining us.
Thank you, Julie.
Uh, so it's just been an amazing 6 weeks here with you, Phil, and I've just been so thrilled to visit with you every week.
It's been fun. It's like you said, it goes so quickly. Hi, Julie. How are you? What? Time to go? Okay.
I know. Crazy, crazy. All right, Life Class Book Club Live is free. Be sure to register at www.juliegeigel.com and just click on the Life Class tab. If you want access to all of our archives, you do need to become a member, and there's information over there on our website to sign up to do that. All right, well, let's dive right in because we know how incredibly fast our time goes. We are going to start over on page 453. And it is something that you said, Phil. Writing a new story is more difficult if the person you are forgiving remains in your life and continues to act in ways that require forgiveness.
Mhm.
A thoughtless relative is one thing, an abusive spouse is quite another. Forgiveness does not equal tolerance. If your antagonist treats your forgiveness as a welcome mat for further abuse, your new story must be written from a safe distance. And I know you referenced this in our last segment, but can we take some time to expand on that a little bit? I think it's huge.
Well, sure. You have to take care of yourself. You have to have enough self-worth and value that if somebody is abusing you in some way, you need to take corrective action and remove yourself from that situation. You can still forgive that person now or later, or that is a separate issue. First of all, be safe. Get yourself in a safe place because no one has the right to harm anyone else or be abusive in any way. And that's a toxic situation and it should not be tolerated.
Absolutely. And I think that what you said is key. And, the healing comes in removing yourself from that situation or from that person. And, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pack your bags and run, and file for divorce. But what it does mean is that you need to take action instead of being a silent witness. And so taking simple action like removing yourself, going for a walk or going to the store or whatever it is. But I think it's really important, what I try to teach people is that the follow-up is key. And the follow-up is what helps you set boundaries, create boundaries for healthy relationships in your life. So certainly if somebody's being abusive to you, in that moment isn't the time to have a rational conversation with them because emotions are flying.
Right. And even there are many situations, well, you brought up a marriage situation where a wife is abused and continues to forgive the husband. Well, the practical effect of that is what? She'll continue to get abused.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the first thing to do again, get in a safe place. That's when healing can begin, and then you can get your thoughts back in a rational way and start to process things.
Gain some perspective.
Yes.
And I think, normally when people say abuse, we think about the batter, the physical abuse. But I think that there's a widespread, rampant abuse that is verbal abuse.
Hmm.
And it's more about words or criticism or shame. And so it's not as easily identified for women. And I think it's easier for women to ignore or deny because, they don't have bruises on their body. And it's not like he, punches me in the face. But I think that as you move on the spiritual path, that you become um, more aware of that energy and, like you said, how toxic and poison that verbal abuse, words, as well as any physical abuse, can be to your spirit. Yeah.
Yes, I've heard many survivors of psychological abuse say that it was much worse than physical abuse.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, because that sticks in your head and continues. All right. Well, and I really would love, Phil, for you to talk to us a little bit about the chapter is set up, for forgiveness here. And at the very beginning, one of your headings is reframe, release, and rewrite. So, and I noticed as we move through that chapter that these are kind of steps
Hmm.
in dealing with forgiveness. Can you take us through that?
Well, forgiveness is a loaded word for a lot of people because what first comes to mind is anger. You don't know what you're asking me to do. I cannot forgive the unforgivable. Well, that comes later in the chapter. What I prefer to do is substitute the word release for forgiveness because what you really need to do is release the hold that the person you are in need of forgiveness for has over you. Um, there's a great quote about, in fact, let me find that right here. Lewis B. Smedes, who wrote about forgiveness, said, "When we forgive, we set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner we set free is us." So that pretty much says it all. If you do not forgive somebody, you are allowing them to continue to have power over your life. Forgiveness or release is about taking your power back. It has nothing to do with the other person. They don't have to apologize. You don't have to tell them they're forgiven. It's something you do for yourself. And it's an act of self-love. And there's another great quote by Malachi McCourt who said, resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. What you're doing with resentment and holding grudges is poisoning yourself. Now, I don't know if you're going to get into this. Let me jump to it. In the chapter, I talk about Eva Kor, and her act of forgiveness is stunning because really, when you say, well, that's all fine and good for garden variety dust-ups to forgive somebody, but what about something really big? Let's say, Nazi death camps. Well, Eva Kor and her sister, as children, were in Auschwitz and experimented on by Dr. Joseph Mengele. On the 50th anniversary of Auschwitz's liberation, she stood by the rooms of the gas chamber there and forgave Mengele and the Nazis. Now, a lot of people hearing that are going to say, that's inexcusable. Well, again, let me tell you what Eva told me, because I interviewed her about this. She said, I read my document of forgiveness and signed it. I immediately felt the pain lift from my shoulders. Finally, I was no longer a prisoner of Auschwitz. I was finally free. So I say to everybody, forgive your worst enemy. It will heal your soul and set you free. And she also says, most people have a big obstacle to forgiveness because society expects revenge. Forgiveness is nothing more and nothing less than an act of self-healing, an act of self-empowerment. I call it a miracle medicine. It's free, it works, and it has no side effects. So I can talk about forgiveness, but I really have nobody to forgive that did me much harm that so many people can surpass my experience of having an episode in their life or an event that they really cannot forgive. But when you talk to Eva Kor, who has transcended such a horrible event and childhood, and she has come to this understanding and expresses it so eloquently, how forgiveness is a gift and it releases you from the prison that you have been in, even though the person who consigned you to that prison may be long dead or know nothing about what you're going through. They still hold the keys to your prison because you are giving them that opportunity to keep you locked up still.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And I love her story, definitely. On page 461, there's just a whole section that I'd like to kind of move through. Looking through God's eyes, you realize that adversarial relationships are an illusion, and that every difficult encounter has been divinely orchestrated. Before incarnating, you agreed to participate in situations on earth that would help you learn pivotal lessons, achieve your life's purpose, and advance your spiritual growth. In light of these sacred contracts, every quarrel, every betrayal, every hostility becomes a gift, an occasion to grow and evolve. So, can you talk to us a little bit, maybe for people who aren't familiar with the contract, what that means and how that affects the forgiveness?
Sure. Well, Carolyn Mace wrote an entire book called Sacred Contracts about pre-incarnation agreements that you make based on the soul lessons you're going to learn in this life and your karmic debts that need to be repaid. And you come into this life, and so when you have encounters with people who have likewise agreed to, before you incarnate in this life, to say, okay, I'm going to be playing this role, you're going to be playing this role, and I'm going to do this to you. It's going to look really bad, but remembering, on a soul level, we're agreeing that this is for your higher good, and there are lessons that you need to learn from this. So if you look at it from that perspective, there's nothing to forgive, because it is the will of divine intelligence that you experience this. That's coming from an awfully high perspective, and it's difficult to do in difficult circumstances, certainly. And it goes back to what we talked about. If you're in a situation that is not safe, don't rationalize and say, well, I guess I chose to experience this, so I'm just going to have to tough it out. No, get safe. And
Well, that's not the purpose of your lesson.
right.
The purpose of your lesson isn't to let somebody walk all over you. Otherwise, you'll come back into the next lifetime having to deal with that again. The purpose of the lesson is to be able to have the courage to be who you came here to be.
Right, and that lesson might take you 5 minutes to learn, it might take you 5 years, or you might never learn that. But the point is that if we are all one, as all of the great sages and saints have always said, and everyone who has a near-death experience comes back and confirms, then what is really happening here? If we are all one, then we are really interacting with ourselves in different ways to teach ourselves soul lessons, burn off karma, whatever. It's really, we're all souls working together to help each other. Now again, that sounds a little pie in the sky when you're down in the nitty-gritty with difficult situations.
Knee deep in shit, that's what I call it.
Okay, well, you could call it that. That's descriptive. But that's why, again, guess what we're coming back to? Surrender. If we surrender that, okay, this is happening because it's supposed to be happening, life is unfolding as it should, you don't surrender to the situation in that, I guess I can't do anything. You surrender to the knowledge that this is happening because it needs to happen for your soul growth and the soul growth of others. And then follow your guidance and take action and start, learning those lessons and doing what you feel guided to do. I think all of us have had situations, whether it's a failed relationship, a job loss, an accident, an illness, that at the time we think is devastating, and yet we look back months, years later and say, oh, it was a blessing in disguise. We all can relate to that. And in the midst of it, as someone said, years from now, you're going to look back at this and say it's a blessing in disguise. You wouldn't say, why, thank you. I think I will change my perspective right now.
Yeah, and you might not realize that it's a blessing until you're on your deathbed. So it's
Right.
not like
or beyond.
Yeah, it's not like it's an instant awakening.
So all we're talking about is such an overhaul of perspective that it takes the fear of anything happening to you in life, the fear of death, it takes all of that away and just surrenders to divine wisdom and saying, I am only here in this life, in this body, to serve as a pure instrument of divine love. Do with me what you will. And once you surrender to that depth, then everything else is just details.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that a lot of times the lesson is a lesson in learning to love yourself. And when we are able to connect deeply with our soul, we're really able to open up to that divine wisdom and guidance and know with great clarity what action to take or what step to make. Yeah.
Well, only when you love yourself and see and trust that divine wisdom is having events unfold as they are, only when you are centered and in that understanding can you begin to have clarity about not only what you're thinking and feeling, but what to do about it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And we need to bounce over to chapter 18. Behold your beloved. Let's start off on page 478 with my favorite guy, Deepak.
Mm-hmm.
And Deepak says, loving another person is not separate from loving God. One is a single wave, the other is an ocean. I love that.
Well, that's a microcosm of life itself. And we are a wave, God is the ocean. And it's all connected, we're all one. It's just another way of expressing that thought. And when you love another person, what's the challenge in romantic relationship is to use the love you feel for another human being to transcend human love and to love God. That is the purpose of why you're here, to love God, to be one with God. But you learn to love God through loving others romantically or your children. And we're all waves, and it's all one big ocean. So it's a nice way to express that.
Yeah, yeah. And definitely when I can deepen and express my love with another person, that only mirrors back to me. That gives me, I receive what I have given, and deepens my connection with the divine as well. So it just is that beautiful circle, and then that energy ripples out, into the universe, and it affects all of collective consciousness as we can be centered in that love.
Right, and as you talked earlier about the importance of self-love, it applies here too, because loving your own life naturally leads to loving all that life has to offer. And that's a signal to the universe that you are ready for a healthy, loving relationship. And when you are one with love, you will find the one you love.
Oh. Yeah, I know I work a lot, in the psychic realm, and that it has got to be by far the number one question is when am I going to meet my soulmate? And,
Hmm.
I I could typically, just push a button and say the same thing that I've said 100 times to 100 different people, because that message from spirit is undying, that you really need to have that relationship with yourself, and you really need to have that relationship with life around you.
Well, you dramatically improve the odds of meeting your soulmate when you stop trying to find the right person and start trying to be the right person. That is so important. You have to really prepare yourself in body, mind, and spirit to welcome your beloved. And what does that mean? It means to commit to a life of absolute integrity, vigilant self-awareness, continual self-improvement. It means that the higher you raise the vibration of your own being, the more likely you will attract another person at that same higher vibration. And Nathaniel Branden, psychologist and author, great quote, one of my favorite quotes, he says, "Love is for people who know who they are." That's why so many marriages young fail, because you don't know who you are. Not on, most people, I would say, until their 40s or 50s, start learning who they are. And at that point, then you realize, okay, not only what I'm attracted to, but why I'm not attracted to what I'm not attracted to. You get discernment. And if you come together with someone at that higher level of consciousness and vibration and being, your odds of staying together are much, much better.
Absolutely, absolutely. It just is that never-ending cycle of taking that time to honor yourself and to focus on yourself, because
Mhm.
that is definitely one thing I work with people on, that level of vibrational frequency,
Mhm.
because it's really important just to become aware that, okay, if you just got out of a relationship, or you just had a really bad experience, maybe there was a death in your life or something traumatic happened, do you really want to attract a person into your life, vibrating at a lower vibrational frequency? Because, think about who you're going to attract. And is that really somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with? Wouldn't you be better off, better served to just take that time and cocoon and go inward and heal yourself, recover from that breakup and raise that frequency, raise your self-esteem and your self-confidence, and then, whoa, look at what the universe can bring you then.
Well said, Julie. Too many people who are lonely and frustrated are unwilling to do the self-work that spiritual partnership demands. And instead, they chase a fairy tale fantasy and wonder why it continues to elude them.
Yes, yes, most definitely. Okay. I love how Charlotte talks about love as a channel on page 485. The point
Mhm.
of relationship is the added power that life gets in working with it as a channel. A good relationship gives life more power. If two people are strong together, then life has a more powerful channel than it has with two single people. It's almost as though a third and larger channel has been formed. Can you talk to us about the power of two makes three?
Oh, sure. You referenced it just a few minutes ago about how when you love, you are connecting with collective consciousness. And a romantic relationship is not only a vehicle for deeper, richer expressions and explorations of yourself, it's an opportunity for life itself to manifest more profoundly. because when you get two people together at a vibrating, as you would say, at a high level, that energy ripples out into the universe and serves as inspiration and a model to others to get to that point themselves, to reach for those heights. And it goes back to talking about everything we do with positive energy ripples out into the world. You become part of the solution instead of the problem. If you're thinking and acting negatively, you're part of the problem. Well, when you're in love and that positive energy is just coursing through you and you have a partner, and that is such powerful energy, it multiplies the effect that just one person can have, and it makes the world a better place.
Bottom line. Bottom line. And then Wayne Dyer has a great quote on page 498. There are no failed relationships. Every person who enters and exits your life does so in a mutual sharing of life's divine lessons.
Yes, actually, the story at the end of this chapter, I have a story at the end of every chapter.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
I talk about my second marriage ending pretty much as soon as it began, and at the time it was difficult. But I see now perfectly why we came together and why we came apart. And oh my God, it was so beneficial. I learned so much, not only learned intellectually, but I had to experience that so I could walk my talk, because until then it was theory. Now it's practice, and it helped me become who I needed to be in order to write this book and talk about these things. I had to have those experiences, and it was just absolutely perfect in every way. The joys, the pains, it was all terrific. And I love Khalil Gibran's quote about this. He said, "When love beckons to you, follow him, though his ways are hard and steep. And when his wings enfold you, yield to him, though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you. And when he speaks to you, believe in him, though his voice may shatter your dreams as the north wind lays waste the garden." And that is a beautiful way of saying, when you love someone, give all of yourself to that love. And even if you feel it's going to destroy you, it will have been worth it. It is always worth it.
Always.
There's no failed relationship, because each relationship prepares you for your next either relationship or stage in life, and it seasons you so you can fulfill your life's purpose.
Yeah, I love how you said that it seasons you, because all of our experiences really do season us to be more of who we are. Okay, let's jump over to the affirmations, your last kind of bonus section of the book. This was a pleasant surprise to end with. My favorite one and I'm a huge affirmation freak. I have them everywhere. It's, the ones I have on my computer right now: out of this experience, only good will come. Money loves me. I love that one. May my money wisdom increase. I mean, I have them all over the house. I drive my family crazy with my affirmations. But the one that just jumped off the page for me, and you had some really great ones here, Phil. The instant I set a goal, my angels spring into action.
Yeah, that's a nice descriptive one with nice visual, and it just makes you feel good, absolutely. But, affirmations work so well for me. When I started using affirmations, I thought, okay, I'll just say a few, maybe this morning, and then the day after tomorrow I'll say a few. No, it doesn't work that way. I had to do every morning, every night, during the day as often as I could, for weeks. And it worked. Instead of thinking negative or self-defeating thoughts, I started thinking more positively, and it stuck. And they completely turn things around for me. I can't recommend affirmations highly enough. There are some very key points. Well, first of all, what is an affirmation? It's an easy and effective way to reshape the way that you look at the world. Because logically, if you train yourself to think more positive, loving thoughts, you're going to have a more positive, loving life. So, really, what is an affirmation? It's a positive statement that something is already so. And there's a few interesting, you could call it rules about that, and I go into it in depth, why you never start an affirmation with I want or I will, because that essentially is a giant loophole. I will means I'll start tomorrow. That's why you have to put it in the present tense. And actually, anybody who's listening to this now, I will send you the whole chapter on affirmations as a PDF if you email me at godseyes@me.com, because it goes into all of these details and explains all of the dynamics and why language is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could actually pull that chapter out of this book, Phil, and sell it as an ebook separately.
That's true.
Because it's very well done. It explains what an affirmation is, how to write one, how to use one, beyond anything I've ever seen with that.
I appreciate that. And I want to address one more thing about affirmations. A lot of people say, I can't say I'm loving and compassionate because I'm not loving and compassionate. I'm lying to myself. No. It's not dishonest to phrase affirmations as if you've already made the change. You're not lying to yourself. You are reprogramming your subconscious. And every time you repeat an affirmation, you're positively reinforcing that programming until you grow into what you are affirming. But more importantly, on a deeper level, remember that your soul is perfect and magnificent with capacities beyond your comprehension. So therefore, whatever you affirm will indeed be true on the deepest, most meaningful level imaginable.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, affirmations are simply reminders of your true nature.
Which is what I love so much about that. It really does help you realign and attune to your soul and increase that connection and that frequency. And I think that, in my experience with people, like a really good one by Louise Hay, I completely love and accept myself. That's a really hard one for many people. And
It is.
if you can start with something more basic, every day in every way I get better and better, something that is more believable, and work your way into I completely love and accept myself. That's another technique as you move through affirmations. But yeah, definitely it's about reprogramming that subconscious mind. And I love when you say in there, there are going to be thoughts traveling through your mind every second of your day. Why not put some productive, specific thoughts that are positive instead of this constant, incessant chatter that tears us down all the time?
Absolutely. And that was very well said about working your way up, because I'll just echo what you just said. If an affirmation feels too grandiose, scale it down to whatever you're comfortable with. And with affirmations, you just got to keep faking it till you're making it.
I know that. That's one of my favorite things, fake it till you make it, because with that subconscious mind and hypnosis, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, it still works.
Oh, absolutely. Perception is reality. But as you said, besides, you're going to talk to yourself one way or another. You might as well have something positive to say. And if you fight that, then what you're choosing to do is remain in a negative state, and it gets back to what we talked about, worrying. You may think, oh, I'm a realist, I'm a practicalist, the world is a terrible place, therefore being a cynic is the only natural reaction to the world. No, there's a better way.
Right.
And affirmations are a good first step towards that realization.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that, that affirmation journey is so powerful for so many people. One thing I always tell people is that the negative chatter in your mind is the default that we all come in with, and it automatically will revert to the default. But once you become aware that you can reprogram that default and you can have it be your natural state, as you mentioned before in another chapter, that's when you need to be armed and ready with affirmations. So when that negative thought comes into your mind, grab your affirmation book, look at your sticker. My girlfriend makes these beautiful positive quotes at sawdustcity.com. And I love those because those are permanent, constant reminders. And I'm looking around my office because they're filled with them. But be armed and ready. Don't allow your, don't live your life by default. Step up and take back your power. And you can do that with affirmations.
And what could be easier than just remembering a few things to say throughout the day? Just, I am getting better and better every day in every way. Okay, gee, that was difficult.
Yeah, and it's free.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost money.
Yeah.
Say, Phil, before we wrap things up today, I am just really curious to understand the process that you took to write this book, because I mean, I look at this book and I mean, and all of the quotes in here, it's mind-boggling. This must have took you 40 years to write it.
Well, it started basically when I was starting to learn about spirituality, and I was thought, okay, I'm going to look for the book that explains how all this works, because there's got to be a book that includes all of these spiritual principles I'm learning about. It shows how they interact with each other, how to weave them all together into a cohesive worldview, how to apply all this wisdom to daily life, and I couldn't find that book. And I remember thinking, I guess I have to write it myself someday. But I was nowhere near ready. So for about 8 years, I continued to just collect. I had 2 Word document files, concepts and quotes. And I didn't know exactly what the book would look like, but I could recognize the pieces of it when I saw them. I thought, that has to be in the book. Oh, that's in the book. And I just had these documents, hundreds of pages. And finally, after about 8 years, I thought, okay, I got to start. I still might not be ready in terms of I'm not wise enough yet, or a good enough writer, but I got to get started. And that took me about 6 more years, but there were months that went by where I was working on other things, and then, I kept on revising, and it was just a process. And every minute of it was a joy. Even the drudgery part of it was a joy, because when you know what you have to do in this life, okay, I didn't choose to write this book, it chose me. So it's just, my purpose, and I just love working on it. I still do. I continue to tweak it. And just the other day I was trying to think, I got to come up with a way to say that. And there's nothing more exhilarating than nailing a sentence that has to do with your life's purpose in this book, and I just love doing it.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, you're quite prolific yourself, and there's tons of your synopsis, or words that are just amazing quotes, and I can tell they're channeled work. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I felt guided in every second of writing this, and throughout every day it was just things clicked into place like clockwork. I could count on it. I'll give you a quick example. I had friends of mine, look at this and say, give me feedback as I'm writing this, which was invaluable. And a friend of mine said, this paragraph is too long, it has 2 thoughts, break it into 2 separate sentences. And I had thought of doing that and decided against it. I looked at it again, I thought, Bob's right, I got to do that. And I thought, okay, now I need a quote to pair up with this second sentence. And at that precise moment, ping, I got an email from another friend who said, hey, I saw this quote by Hafiz and thought you'd like to see it. It's the only quote she ever sent me, and why, thank you. It would fit perfectly. So I just cut and paste, boom, done. I mean, it was that kind of synchronicity that just happened all the time.
Yeah, and the index in the back of the book is phenomenal. I mean, it just is really amazing. You know, the one thing, and I do have to say, Phil, the one thing that I was hoping for, and you might even be able to send it to me, is a list of the books that the people wrote, where you got the quotes from.
Well, I can tell you that right now. Go to godseyesquotes.com. You will find on that every single quote in the book, the source of every quote, not only the source, but a link to that source.
Okay, hold on. God's Eyes Quote.
Quotes, plural. godseyesquotes.com.
Okay.
It took me 3 months to do that full time, just to source every quote. I wanted to make absolutely sure that every comma was in place, every word was correct, according to the original source. And so that was just another very enjoyable part of the process.
Well, and I mean, that could be a book in itself, like I said, because it's such an amazing resource, especially, yeah.
Well, if you also want to know about the people who said the quotes, go to God's Eyes Bios, BIOS.com. I'm still working on that. I've got a lot of work to do, but I am doing short little biographies of everybody who I quote.
Okay.
Paragraph.
Well, and what comes to mind, and I'll have to send you this link, is I did a newsletter for a long time, and I did like 3 affirmations, and then I had like a story. And I got most of my affirmations from a website. I think it's called affirmations.com. And the reason hers was amazing is because she had the affirmations categorized by topic. And I think, you know, like I told you, I do a daily inspiration for my group. And it's just a daily quote. And again, I think that there would be huge value in creating a website with, you know, the topics and the quotes or whatever that, you know, could be some potential traffic for you as well. But the whole process is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, but I feel I came into this life with 2 assignments: to get my daughter to the point she is now, and to get this book out in the world. So it's a nice feeling to feel that the foundation of my work is done. So if something happens, I'll say, I had a nice run, I got my work done. Still got a lot to do, but the basics are done.
Yes, well, absolutely. And it's just like I said, it's been a thrill and an honor to have you join us. And thank you so much.
Well, it's been great to talk with you every week. So it's nice to get to know you a little better through these talks too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everyone, this is Life Class Book Club. If you'd like to continue with us, be sure to register over at juliegeigel.com and just click on the Life Class tab. We'd be thrilled if you liked us on Facebook and followed us on Twitter to keep this connection going. And remember, if you keep on doing what you've always done, you'll keep on being who you've always been. Change doesn't happen unless you make a change. And Phil, can you share your links with us again on how we can get that book?
To order the book, go to godseyes.amazon.com. To get an overview of the book with more information, godseyesbook.com, and email me at godseyes@me.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, Phil. Well, thank you again.
Thank you, Julie. It's been great.